had a problem even in those days. Accordingly, on 20th September 1753, Mr. Thomas Cole was appointed as the first Accountant General of the Mayor's Court of the East India Company in India. It traced back 257 years to September 1753. With India's independence in 1947 and the adoption of the country's constitution, the CAG of India today derives its authority and powers from Articles 148 to 151 of the Constitution of India. The CAG of India is described as one of the four pillars of India's democratic constitution. The other three being the executive, is the accountability of the executive to the legislature for money spent out of the public purse. The instrument available to the legislature to hold the executive to account is through the audit conducted by the CAG of India. The CAG has legislative oversight over national and state finances. The institution of the CAG of India has necessarily, therefore, a very close relationship with the legislature. Union and states shall be submitted to the President or Governor, who shall cause the reports to be laid before Parliament or the state legislature. From the regularity audit model, that is an audit which looked at compliance with rules and regulations, propriety and property of public expenditure, the CAG's audit has now moved on to the concept of performance audit, which is concerned with the efficiency, economy and effectiveness of public expenditure. The audit emphasis today is on results and outcomes. Audit by the CAG is also no longer a standalone activity. In an increasing number of cases, it is now conducted in synergy with social audit groups, wider civil society, and other stakeholders. I must also mention that the reforms initiated in the early 1990s have also had a profound and continuing impact on audit conducted by the CAG. The advent of computerization and information technology in a big way in government and the public sector during the 90s compelled the CAG to embark on an entirely new type of audit, that is, information technology audit. The strengthening of the Panchayati Raj institutions and the creation of a third tier of government following the 73rd and 74th amendments to the Constitution, tax reforms and computerization of tax administration, government's engagement with the private sector in funding responsibilities and revenue sharing arrangements, the emergence of regulatory bodies, autonomous bodies, special purpose vehicles, the increased emphasis and reliance by government on civil society and NGOs for implementation of socio-economic development plans have all been major challenges and opportunities for audit. From the existing cash-based accounting system in government to an accrual-based accounting system has also opened up an entirely new field of work for the CAG. The CAG's right to conduct audit as per its discretion was challenged. These issues, as and when they came up, were all eventually resolved to the advantage of the public good. Today, the CAG is called upon by the legislature to examine the books of even private entities where national interest is involved. The example I can readily cite is where the CAG is currently examining the books of a few telecom operators, telecom service operators, and an oil exploration company in the private sector. The CAG today is a 55,000 strong organization. It currently has around 154 establishments spread across the length and breadth of our country and comprises of 30 accounts and entitlement offices, 63 offices auditing the central and state governments, 17 offices auditing the railway department, 4 offices auditing the armed forces, 12 offices auditing the central public sector undertakings, 13 offices auditing the post and telecommunications department, 12 training institutes, and 3 overseas offices. Shillong has the distinction of being the town where the Indian Audit and Accounts Department set up its first office in the Northeast in 1912. The office was then known as the Office of the Comptroller General of Assam. So in another 2 years from now, the Accountant General Office in Shillong will be celebrating its centenary. On this day, the 155th 50th year of the institution of the CAG of India, my colleagues and I consider ourselves fortunate to serve this organization and be a part of its history. We consider this an occasion for us to renew our commitment to the task which the founding fathers of the Constitution envisaged for the institution of this Comptroller and Auditor General. Even as I now speak, similar events as this one are being held in our offices across the country, with a flagship program currently underway at Vigyan Bhavan, New Delhi, presided over by the President of India and attended by the Vice President, Prime Minister, and other distinguished dignitaries from the government and public life. In conclusion, I would say that the institution of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India will continue to grow from strength to strength because of the trust it enjoys, not only of Parliament and Executive, but also of the press and the public at large. I once again welcome His Excellency the Governor of Meghalaya, the Honourable Speaker of the Meghalaya Legislative Assembly, and our distinguished guests. Your presence today encourages us and fills us with hope for the future for an institution in which all Indians have a stake. Thank you.
And sir, I would also like to request you to kindly present the mementos to His Excellency the Governor of Meghalaya and honourable speakers. The PowerPoint presentation on the history of the institution of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India.
Thank you. I shall go through the history of the 150 years of Indian Audit and Accounts Department. As already highlighted, we trace our history from the 16th November 1860. This is the significance when the functions of audit and accounts were amalgamated and the post of an Auditor General for India was created, and Honorable Sir Edmund Drummond took over the office of the Auditor General of India on 16 November 1860. There was already an existing accounting and auditing arrangement, but it was amalgamated in 1860, and that is from where the present structure of the CNAG and its officer derives its current setup. But there was a history before 1860 also. The East India Company was established on 31st December 1600 AD, and on 20th September 1753, the first Accountant General of the Mayor's Court was appointed during the East India Company. In July 1777, the Audit and Accounts offices were placed under the General Department. The Accountant General to the Government of India was nominated to look after this department, and this was a gentleman called William Larkins. The audit functions, the Military Auditor General was created under this Accountant General to scrutinize the audit of the military expenditure in 1786. This was followed by, in 1788, when the audit functions also started covering revenue, civil, marine and commercial. It was here that the civil audit became a part of the auditing functions, and in 1846 the post of the Accountant General was abolished and the duties and responsibilities were transferred to the Finance Secretary to the Government of India. There was a temporary period from 1846 to roughly 1860 when these functions were taken over by the Finance Department. Till 1857, the accounts of the three presidencies of Bengal, Madras and Bombay were prepared separately. However, in 1857, a pan-India accounting system was brought into place. The accounting system was reorganized by amalgamating separate accounting organizations existing in the three presidencies into one imperial establishment, and they were put under the charge of an Accountant General. This department was called the General Department of Accounts, and it was under the Accountant General of Government of India. The arrangement became effective from 1st May 1858. The British Crown took over the reins of the governance of British India from the East India Company in 1858. So, this was the history before 1860. In 1860, the first Auditor General of India was appointed. He took over the charge on 16 November 1860. There were 15 Auditor Generals from November 1860 to 14th August 1947. Interestingly, the salary of the Auditor General on 15th August 1947 was 5,000 rupees, while of the Revenue Secretary was 3,500 at that point of time. Bertie Montrose was the last British Auditor General. He continued to be the Auditor General after independence, and in the post-independence, Sir Vyakran Narahari Rao was the Auditor General till 26 January 1950. Thereafter he became the Comptroller and Auditor General. His salary was 5,000 rupees as the Auditor General, but when he became the Comptroller and Auditor General, under the first pay commission, his salary was 4,000 rupees. He was given 1,000 rupees as a special pay. And there have been 11 CNAGs so far since that time. Shri V. Narahari Rao was the first CNAG. During this time, the Department of I&AT had its 5-year plans, and a training school for the Indian Audit and Account Services was established at Shimla. Dr. A.K. Chanda was the second Comptroller and Auditor General. The foundation stone for the accounts building at Shillong was laid during his tenure. He laid the foundation stone. A number of new states and union territories came into existence during this tenure. The present financial structure largely derived their existence from the developments during the tenure of Shri A.K. Chanda. He introduced the concept of financial advisors in the union ministries to cope with the huge volume of work generated by developmental planning. Shri A.K. Roy was the third Comptroller and Auditor General of India. He initiated the system of revenue audit that improved the tax work generated by the developmental planning. He introduced the concept of efficiency cum performance audit, where the emphasis was on outcomes. Shri S. Ranganathan was the Comptroller and Auditor General, the fourth Comptroller and Auditor General. The Comptroller and Auditor General's duties, powers and conditions of service act 1971 was passed during his tenure. It was a major landmark for the department and for the public auditing as such, as it defined the spheres of audit for the CNAG. Shri A. Bakshi was the next Auditor General, next CNAG. During his tenure, the departmentalization of the accounts of central government took place when the accounting functions for the central government were transferred to the respective departments of the central government. Shri Gyan Prakash was the sixth Comptroller and Auditor General. And during this time in 1984, the audit and accounting functions were bifurcated within the CNAG. And that is where we trace our separation of offices as audit offices and account and entitlement offices in the state government, on the state government side. Shri T.N. Chaturvedi was the seventh Comptroller and Auditor General. The computerization in the department was initiated during the period of Shri T.N. Chaturvedi. Shri C.G. Somaiya was the 8th Comptroller and Auditor General. He was, during this time, the Indian Audit Accounts Department had its footprints in the international auditing arena also. He was the first Indian to be appointed as the chairman of the United Nations Boards of Auditors. He was elected as the chairman of the Asian Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. India today is a major player in the international auditing fraternity. Shri V.K. Shunglu is the 9th Comptroller Auditor General of India. He currently is heading a probe into